After I became a millionaire, I stopped recognizing my own reflection. My name is Natalie Ashford. I'm the founder of Ashford Interiors, one of the most exclusive interior design firms in Manhattan. My client list reads like a Forbes roster: penthouse owners, hedge fund managers, old money families who want their Park Avenue apartments to whisper elegance instead of scream wealth. I don't just design spaces, I create emotional architecture. Every room I touch becomes a sanctuary, a poem written in velvet and marble and light. But here's what no one tells you about building beauty for others. You forget how to build it for yourself. It was a Tuesday morning in late October when everything shifted. I was standing in my Upper East Side apartment, 3,000 square feet of floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, walls painted in that specific shade of grayish that photographed like a dream, furniture arranged with the mathematical precision I'd perfected over 2 decades. Everything was flawless. Everything was cold. I had just returned from my annual executive physical at Mount Sinai. Dr. Reeves, my physician for the past 8 years, had run the usual tests: blood work, EKG, bone density scan. I'd gone through the motions the way I always did, efficiently, politely, already mentally designing a client's Tribeca loft while the nurse took my vitals. But this time, Dr. Reeves did something she'd never done before. She closed my file, looked at me directly, and asked a question that made the entire room tilt. "Natalie," she said quietly, "when was the last time you felt at home? Before we continue, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Like this video so this story reaches more hearts, and subscribe for the next journeys." I remember laughing. It was a reflex. The same polished laugh I used in client meetings when someone suggested something absurd like neon accent walls. "I design homes for a living, Dr. Reeves. I feel at home everywhere." She didn't smile back. "That's not what I asked." I left her office with a clean bill of health and a prescription I didn't understand. Not for medication, for something else entirely. Something she'd written on a small card and pressed into my hand before I walked out. I didn't look at it until I was back in my apartment, standing in my living room with my coat still on, staring at the cream sofa no one had ever sat on, the coffee table books arranged by color gradient, the orchids that got replaced every week before they could wilt. The card was still in my pocket. I could feel its weight like a stone. But I didn't pull it out. Not yet. Because some part of me, the part I'd been ignoring for years, the part buried under fabric swatches and client deadlines and the relentless pursuit of perfection, already knew what it would say. And I wasn't ready. Outside my windows, Central Park blazed with autumn color. Inside, everything was beige and cream, and silent. I stood there for 20 minutes, not moving, barely breathing, while Manhattan hummed 43 floors below. My phone buzzed. A text from my assistant. "Mrs. Chen wants to move the Hamptons consultation to Friday. Confirm?" I typed back. "Confirmed." Then I walked to my bedroom, designed with the same pristine aesthetic as a 5-star hotel suite, and stood in front of the full-length mirror. For the first time in months, I actually looked at myself, and I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd done that either. The next morning, I woke up at 5:47 a.m., 3 minutes before my alarm. My body had learned precision the way some people learn languages, through repetition, discipline, and the quiet belief that control equals safety. I went through my routine with the same choreography I'd perfected over years. Green juice, Pilates mat in front of the window, shower with the water temperature set to exactly 102 degrees, skincare, 8 steps, time to the second, hair blown out smooth, wardrobe selected the night before. Today, a charcoal Armani suit with a silk blouse the color of champagne. By 7:15, I looked like the version of myself that belonged in magazines. Polished, elegant, untouchable. But Dr. Reeves' question kept circling back, uninvited. When was the last time you felt at home? I still hadn't looked at the card. My first appointment was at 9, a walkthrough of a newly renovated brownstone in the West Village. The client, Amanda Strauss, had hired me 6 months ago after her divorce. "I want a space that feels like me," she'd said during our initial consultation, her voice raw with hope. Not us, just me. I understood that request in a way I never told clients, the art of designing for someone's new life, the architecture of reinvention. The brownstone was luminous. Original hardwood floors, exposed brick, windows that framed the morning light like paintings. Amanda met me at the door in yoga clothes, barefoot, her face free of makeup. "Natalie." She smiled and it reached her eyes. "Come in. I made coffee." We walked through the space together, and I watched her touch things: the kitchen counter, the window frame, the built-in bookshelf I'd specified. There was an intimacy to it, a recognition. She lived here. Really lived here. "This room," she said, stopping in what would become her reading nook. "This is my favorite. When I sit here in the afternoons, I feel like I can finally breathe." Something twisted in my chest. I made notes. Suggested a vintage Persian rug, linen curtains instead of silk, a reading lamp with warm light. All the elements that would make this space softer, more lived in, more hers. "You have a gift," Amanda said as I was leaving. "You see what people need before they do." I smiled, thanked her, walked back out into the October air. But her words followed me down the sidewalk, mixing with Dr. Reeves's question, until they formed something I didn't want to examine. "You see what people need before they do. When was the last time you felt at home?" Back at my office in Midtown, my assistant Priya had organized my afternoon. 3 client calls, 2 vendor meetings, a site visit to a penthouse under construction in Hudson Yards. My calendar was a Tetris game of perfection, every hour accounted for, every gap filled. "Your dry cleaning is in your office," Priya said, not looking up from her computer. "And your mother called, twice." My hand paused on the door handle. "What did she want?" "She didn't say, just asked you to call back." I nodded, filed it away in the part of my brain reserved for things I'd handle later. Much later. Inside my office, I finally sat down. Alone. The city stretched out beyond my windows, steel and glass and ambition. I'd worked 14-hour days for 2 decades to earn this view, this desk, this life. I reached into my bag and pulled out Dr. Reeves's card. It was smaller than I remembered. Simple, white cardstock with her handwriting in blue ink. I stared at it for a long time before I finally read what she'd written. Just 4 words. "Find your way back." And below that, a phone number. Not hers. Someone else's. My hands were shaking. I turned the card over. On the back, she'd added one more line. "You're not lost, Natalie. You're just living in someone else's design." I sat there as the afternoon light shifted across my desk, as the city moved and breathed and lived below me. Then I put the card in my top drawer, closed it firmly, and opened my laptop. Mrs. Chen's Hampton's house wouldn't design itself. The phone number on Dr. Reeves's card haunted me for 3 days. I didn't call it. I told myself I was too busy, which was true. The Chen project alone required 16-hour days, marble selection for the primary bathroom, custom millwork for the library, vintage light fixtures sourced from a dealer in Paris who only responded to emails written in French. But busy was my native language. Busy was where I'd always felt safest. It was Friday evening when I finally admitted the truth. I wasn't avoiding the call because I was busy. I was avoiding it because I was terrified of what answering might mean. I stayed late at the office, reviewing fabric samples under the precise lighting I'd installed specifically for color accuracy. Priya had left hours ago. The building was silent except for the hum of the ventilation system and the distant sound of traffic 42 floors below. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Natalie, I know you're working, but please call me when you can. It's been 2 months. 2 months. Had it really been that long?" I typed back, "I will. Soon. I promise." Then I set my phone face down and returned to the fabric samples. 12 shades of blue, each subtly different, each carrying its own emotional weight. Navy for grounding, cobalt for energy, powder blue for serenity. I'd built a career on understanding the emotional vocabulary of color and texture and light. I could walk into a stranger's empty apartment and know exactly what their soul was asking for. Warmth, drama, peace, permission to finally exhale. But when was the last time I'd asked myself that question? What is your soul asking for, Natalie? I closed my eyes. The answer came immediately, unbidden, unwelcome. To stop performing. My phone rang, shattering the silence. I grabbed it instinctively, expecting a client emergency. It was my mother. My thumb hovered over the decline button. Then, for reasons I couldn't name, I answered. "Hi, Mom." Natalie. Her voice was soft, careful, the way people speak when they're afraid of breaking something fragile. "I was starting to think you'd forgotten my number." "I'm sorry. Work has been work," she finished gently. "It's always work, sweetheart." I leaned back in my chair, suddenly exhausted. Through my office windows, Manhattan glittered like a jewelry box. "Is everything okay? Priya said you called twice." "Everything's fine. She paused. "I miss you. Your father and I were looking at old photos last night. You, at 7 years old, building fairy houses in the backyard out of sticks and leaves and whatever you could find. Do you remember that?" Something cracked open in my chest. I did remember. Long summer afternoons in our Connecticut backyard, dirt under my fingernails, imagination running wild. I'd spend hours arranging tiny rooms for creatures I'd never seen but believed in completely. Each house was different. Each one was home. "I remember," I whispered. "You were so happy then," my mother said, "so present, like the whole world existed right there in that little patch of grass." I stared at the fabric samples on my desk. Thousands of dollars worth of imported textiles, all in service of someone else's vision of home. "When was the last time I saw you truly happy, Natalie?" my mother asked. "Not successful, not accomplished, happy." There it was again. The question beneath the question. The truth I kept sidestepping. "Mom, I have to go. There's a client call. At 9 o'clock on a Friday night?" Silence. "Sweetheart," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "Whatever you're running from, it's still going to be there when you stop." We said goodbye. I sat in the dark office for another hour, not working, just staring at my own reflection in the black windows. Dr. Reeves had asked when I last felt at home. My mother had asked when I last felt happy. Different questions. Same answer. I couldn't remember. That night, back in my apartment, I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out an old box from the back of my bedroom closet, one of the few things that had survived my last 3 moves, my countless redesigns, my relentless purging of anything that didn't fit the aesthetic. Inside were photographs. Me at 7, exactly as my mother described. Barefoot, dirty, grinning at the camera with a crown of dandelions on my head. Me at 12, painting my bedroom walls purple against my parents' wishes. My face lit up with defiant joy. Me at 19, in my first apartment, surrounded by mismatched furniture and string lights and mess that somehow felt more like home than anything I'd created since. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being that girl. I'd learned to edit myself, polish myself, design myself into something more palatable, more impressive, more empty. I closed the box, put it back in the closet. But Dr. Reeves's card was still in my desk drawer at the office, and the question it held was getting louder. The breaking point came on a Wednesday afternoon in November, in a place I never expected, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I was there for work, researching period furniture for a client's Fifth Avenue residence. She wanted her dining room to evoke old-world European elegance, the kind that whispered ancestry and refinement. I'd done this type of research hundreds of times. It was methodical, safe, productive. But when I walked into the American wing, something stopped me cold. There was an exhibit I hadn't planned to see. Domestic spaces, the evolution of the American home. Room after room of historical recreations, colonial parlors, Victorian sitting rooms, mid-century living spaces. Each one meticulously preserved, frozen in time. I moved through them slowly, taking notes on architectural details, color palettes, furniture placement, professional observations. Designer brain fully activated. Then I turned a corner and found myself standing in a recreation of a 1950s kitchen. It was modest. Yellow Formica countertops, floral wallpaper, a small breakfast nook with a red vinyl booth. Nothing expensive, nothing rare, nothing that would ever appear in Architectural Digest. But there were details that made my throat tighten. A handwritten grocery list magnetized to the refrigerator, a child's drawing taped to the cabinet, a coffee cup with lipstick on the rim, abandoned mid-morning, someone's reading glasses on the counter, folded next to an open cookbook. It looked lived in, loved, real. A small placard explained, items sourced from the Brennan family home, Queens, New York, 1956. I stood there for 20 minutes, maybe longer, staring at that kitchen. At the evidence of a life actually lived, messy, imperfect, present. When was the last time my own kitchen looked like someone lived there? When was the last time I'd left a coffee cup on the counter, read a recipe, made something with my own hands just because I wanted to? My phone buzzed. A text from Amanda Strauss, my West Village client. Natalie, I'm sitting in my reading nook right now, and I just wanted to say thank you. I never thought I'd feel this at peace in my own home. You gave me that gift. You really see people. I stared at her message until the screen went dark. You really see people, but I didn't see myself. I hadn't in years. I left the museum in a daze, walking aimlessly through Central Park even though I had a 3 o'clock meeting. The November air was sharp, carrying the smell of dried leaves and approaching winter. Around me, people were living, jogging, laughing, arguing, holding hands, eating lunch on benches, reading, napping, existing without purpose or agenda. When was the last time I'd done that? Just existed? I found myself on a bench near Bethesda Fountain, watching a young couple share a pretzel. They were dressed in jeans and old coats. Nothing designer, nothing expensive. But the way they looked at each other, present, connected, home in each other's presence, made something inside me fracture. I pulled out my phone, and before I could stop myself, called my assistant. Cancel my 3 o'clock, I said. And everything else today. Are you okay? Priya's voice was sharp with concern. In 12 years, I'd never canceled a meeting. Never. I'm fine, I lied. I'll be in tomorrow. I hung up before she could ask more questions. Then I sat on that bench for 2 hours, watching strangers live their lives while mine felt like a museum exhibit, perfectly curated, hermetically sealed, untouched. My phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Natalie Ashford? A woman's voice, professional but warm. Yes? This is Dr. Sarah Chen. Dr. Reeves gave me your name. She thought you might call. My heart stopped. I didn't call. I know, Dr. Chen said gently. She asked me to reach out if I didn't hear from you within a week. She was worried. I don't understand. I'm healthy. My physical was... This isn't about your physical health, Natalie. A pause. May I ask you something? Okay. If you could design your own life the way you design spaces for your clients, without budget constraints, without anyone's expectations, without the pressure to perform or impress, what would it look like? The question landed like a blow. I opened my mouth, closed it, tried again. Nothing came out, because I had no idea. That's what I thought, Dr. Chen said softly. Dr. Reeves specializes in the body. I specialize in what the body is trying to tell us when we've stopped listening. When you're ready to hear it, I'm here. No pressure, no timeline, just whenever you're ready to come home to yourself. She gave me her address. I wrote it down on the back of a coffee receipt, my hand shaking. After we hung up, I sat there as the sun set over Central Park, as the city lights began to flicker on like promises, as the temperature dropped and the bench grew cold beneath me. And for the first time in 20 years, I let myself cry. Not elegant tears. Not the kind that look beautiful in photographs. Ugly, gasping, body-shaking sobs that I muffled against my coat sleeve because even in breakdown, I couldn't let go of control completely. A woman passing by stopped. "Are you all right, honey?" I looked up. She was older, maybe 70, with kind eyes and a dog on a leash. "I don't know," I whispered. "I really don't know." She sat down beside me, this stranger, and didn't say anything. Just sat there while I fell apart, while the city moved around us, while everything I'd built so carefully began to crack. When I finally caught my breath, she squeezed my hand once and said, "Whatever you lost, sweetheart, you can find it again. You just have to be brave enough to look." Then she walked away, and I was alone with the truth I'd been avoiding for longer than I could measure. I wasn't living. I was performing, and I couldn't remember when the performance had started, or who I'd been before it did. I made the appointment with Dr. Chen for the following Monday. The weekend in between felt like living underwater. Everything muted, slowed down, surreal. I tried to work, but couldn't focus. I tried to redesign a corner of my apartment, but my hands felt clumsy, disconnected. I tried to sleep, but kept waking up at 3 a.m. with my heart racing, Dr. Chen's question echoing in the dark. If you could design your own life without anyone's expectations, what would it look like? On Sunday evening, my mother called again. This time I answered on the first ring. "Mom," I said, my voice smaller than I intended. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything, sweetheart." I stood at my living room window, watching the lights of Manhattan blur through glass that was always spotless, always perfect. When did I stop being myself? Silence. Then a soft exhale. "Oh, Natalie. I mean it." When did I become this version? When did I start caring more about how things looked than how they felt? Do you really want to know? Her voice was careful, tender. "Yes. Your junior year of college," she said quietly. "You came home for Thanksgiving, and you were different. Thinner, more polished. You'd cut your hair, changed your clothes, started talking about building a brand and cultivating an aesthetic. Your father and I thought it was just maturity. Growing up. Finding your path." I closed my eyes, remembering. 21 years old. My first serious boyfriend had just left me for someone he described as more put together. My design professor had critiqued my portfolio as emotionally scattered, lacking cohesion, I'd looked around at my successful classmates, the ones getting internships, making connections, building futures, and decided I needed to be different, better, more. So I'd edited myself, streamlined, perfected, and I'd never stopped. "Mom," I whispered, "I don't know how to be messy anymore. I don't know how to just exist without a plan." "Then maybe," she said gently, "it's time to learn again." Dr. Chen's office was in a brownstone in the West Village, not far from Amanda's house. The neighborhood felt different from my usual Manhattan. More trees, more texture, more life spilling onto sidewalks. A couple walked past holding hands. A woman sat on her stoop with a book and a cup of tea. A child drew chalk pictures on the sidewalk, evidence of living. The office itself was nothing like I expected. No sterile waiting room, no clinical aesthetic. Instead, warm wood floors, soft lighting, plants everywhere, mismatched furniture that somehow worked. It felt like someone's home. It felt safe. Dr. Chen was younger than her voice suggested, maybe 40, with laugh lines and an ease that immediately put me on edge. I was used to people who performed professionalism. She just was. "Natalie," she said, standing to greet me. "Thank you for coming." We sat in chairs that didn't match. Mine was velvet, hers was leather, and I had to resist the designer impulse to mentally rearrange the room. "Tell me," she began, "what brought you here today?" "Dr. Reeves sent me." "That's what got you through the door. But what brought you here?" I looked at my hands, manicured, perfect, folded neatly in my lap. "I'm successful. I have everything I worked for. My business is thriving. I have clients who trust me, employees who respect me, a life that looks exactly how I planned it. But," the word hung there, patient, waiting. "But I don't recognize myself anymore," I said finally. "I look in the mirror, and I see the right haircut, the right clothes, the right expression. But I don't see me. I don't even know who me is anymore." Dr. Chen nodded slowly. "Tell me about your apartment." The shift in topic threw me. "My apartment? You design spaces for a living. You understand that our environments reflect our inner worlds. So tell me about where you live." I described it. The color palette, the furniture, the layout, the light. Every detail perfect, every element intentional. "It sounds beautiful," Dr. Chen said. "Now tell me, where do you feel most yourself in that space?" I opened my mouth, closed it, tried again. Nothing. "There isn't a place, is there?" she asked gently. My eyes burned. "No. Because it's not designed for living. It's designed for looking." The words cracked something open. "I do that for everyone else," I said, my voice breaking. "I create homes people can actually live in. Spaces where they feel safe and seen and real. But for myself, I built a magazine spread, a showroom, proof that I'm successful." "Proof for whom?" "For everyone who ever doubted me. Everyone who ever said I wasn't enough." "And are you?" Dr. Chen asked. "Enough?" I looked up at her, tears streaming down my face, ruining my perfect makeup. "I don't know. I've spent 20 years trying to become enough, and I still don't know." She handed me a tissue, not the designer kind I kept in my apartment, but the regular cheap kind that actually absorbed tears. "Natalie," she said, "here's what Dr. Reeves and I both see. You have a gift for understanding what people need to feel at home, but somewhere along the way, you decided you didn't deserve that same gift. You decided your job was to be perfect, not human. To be admired, not loved. To be successful, not happy. But I am successful. Yes, she interrupted gently. And you're also exhausted, lonely, disconnected, living in a beautiful prison you designed yourself. The truth of it knocked the air from my lungs. So here's my question, Dr. Chen continued. And you don't have to answer today. You don't have to answer for months. But I want you to start asking it. What would Natalie's home look like if Natalie was the client? I left her office 2 hours later, emotionally raw, mascara smudged. Everything in me shifted and rearranged. On the walk back uptown, I passed a small antique shop I'd walked by 1,000 times without seeing. Today, something in the window caught my eye. A vintage lamp, completely impractical, with a base shaped like a mermaid and a shade covered in hand-painted shells. It was gaudy, whimsical, completely wrong for my apartment's aesthetic. 7-year-old Natalie would have loved it. Before I could think, before I could edit the impulse, I walked inside and bought it. The shop owner wrapped it carefully, smiling. This is a special piece. She's been waiting for the right home. I carried it back to my apartment, this ridiculous lamp, and set it on my pristine white nightstand. It looked absurd, out of place, perfect. That night, I turned it on instead of my designer bedside lamp. And for the first time in years, I fell asleep in light that felt like mine. The lamp was just the beginning. Over the next 3 weeks, small rebellions started appearing in my carefully curated life. A throw blanket in emerald green, too bright, too much, draped over my pristine cream sofa. A stack of books on my coffee table, actually being read, with pages dog-eared and bookmarks lost. A mug left on the counter overnight, lipstick stain and all, because washing it immediately suddenly felt less important than finishing the chapter I was reading. My apartment began to look lived in, imperfect, mine. Priya noticed first. She arrived one morning with fabric samples for the Chen project and stopped dead in her tracks, staring at the emerald blanket. "Did a client leave that?" she asked carefully. "No," I said. "I bought it." Her eyes widened slightly, the equivalent of Priya screaming in shock. In 12 years, she'd never seen me deviate from my signature palette. "It's different." "I know. Do you like it?" I looked at the blanket, this small act of defiance against my own rules. "I do." Something shifted in Priya's expression. Relief, maybe, or recognition. "Good," she said quietly. "It suits you." My sessions with Dr. Chen became a weekly anchor. We talked about the girl I'd been, creative, messy, unafraid. We talked about the pivots I'd made, the armor I'd built, the ways I'd learned to perform instead of feel. "You've been designing your life the way you design for difficult clients," Dr. Chen said during our 4th session. "The ones who don't trust themselves, who keep asking, 'What's trending?' instead of, 'What do I love?' You've been treating yourself like you don't deserve your own expertise." The observation stung because it was true. "So what do? I asked. "You start making choices based on what feels right instead of what looks right. You start designing for the woman you are, not the woman you think you should be." It sounded simple. It was terrifying. The real test came in mid-December, during the final walkthrough of the Chen Hamptons project. 14 months of work, hundreds of thousands of dollars, every detail executed flawlessly. The house was a masterpiece. Elegant, sophisticated, exactly what Mrs. Chen had requested. We walked through room after room, Mrs. Chen making appreciative sounds, her assistant taking photographs. Everything was perfect. Until we reached the primary suite. Mrs. Chen stopped in the doorway, silent. I designed the room in soft neutrals with platinum accents. Serene, luxurious, timeless. Museum-quality artwork, custom bedding, a sitting area that looked like a 5-star hotel. "It's beautiful, Natalie," Mrs. Chen said finally. Absolutely beautiful. But I heard what she didn't say. I'd been doing this too long not to hear it. But? I asked. She looked at me, surprised. How did you... Tell me. She walked to the window, touching the silk drapes. It's just... I thought I wanted elegant, impressive, something that would photograph well. But now that I'm standing here... She trailed off. It doesn't feel like yours, I finished quietly. I'm so sorry. I know how much work... Don't apologize, I said. And then I did something I'd never done in 20 years of design. I asked the question Dr. Chen had taught me to ask. Mrs. Chen, if you could design this room for yourself, not for guests, not for photographs, not for anyone's expectations, what would it look like? Her eyes filled with tears. I'd want color. Maybe that dusty rose I loved as a girl. And books everywhere. Not decorator books. My actual books, the ones I've collected. And that ridiculous vintage chair my grandmother left me. The one I've been keeping in storage because it doesn't go with anything. Then that's what we'll do. But the budget, the timeline, is flexible, I said firmly. Mrs. Chen, I've spent my career creating beautiful spaces, but recently I've learned something. Beautiful doesn't mean anything if it doesn't feel like home. So let's start over. Let's make this room yours. The relief on her face was worth every hour of work we'd have to redo. That night, I sat in my apartment, now dotted with small rebellions against perfection, and made a decision that had been building for weeks. I opened my laptop and started an email to my 20 largest clients. My hands shook as I typed, "Dear name, I'm writing to let you know that Ashford Interiors will be making some changes in how we approach design. For 20 years, I've created spaces based on trends, prestige, and aesthetic perfection. Moving forward, I'll be focusing on something different, creating homes that feel as good as they look. Spaces designed for living, not just for admiring. This may mean more color, more texture, more of what makes you unique, even if it breaks design rules. It means I'll be asking harder questions about what you actually need versus what you think you should want. If this new direction doesn't align with your vision, I completely understand and will happily provide referrals to other excellent designers. But if you're ready to create a space that truly feels like home, I'd be honored to continue working together." I read it 3 times. Then before I could second guess, I sent it. Within an hour, responses started arriving. I expected cancellations, concerns, questions about my judgment. Instead, finally, I was afraid to tell you I wanted something warmer. And this is exactly why I hired you. I'm so glad you're doing this. And can we start over on my living room? I was never brave enough to tell you I hated the gray. I sat there reading emails through tears, realizing that all this time, my clients hadn't needed me to be perfect. They'd needed me to be real. They'd needed permission to be themselves. The same permission I'd been denying myself for 20 years. On Christmas Eve, I did something I hadn't done in a decade. I went home to Connecticut to spend the holiday with my parents. My mother opened the door and gasped, not at my clothes or my hair, though I'd let it air dry instead of blow it out, let it be wavy and imperfect. She gasped at my face. "You look different," she whispered. "Better or worse? Present." She pulled me into a hug. "You look present." That night, after dinner, I found myself in my childhood bedroom, the one I'd painted purple at 12, the one I'd been too embarrassed to photograph when design magazines wanted to feature my parents' house. It was still purple, still had the string lights, still had drawings pinned to the walls and a collection of beach glass on the windowsill. It looked nothing like the spaces I designed, and it felt more like home than anywhere I'd been in years. I pulled out my phone and called Dr. Chen, even though it was late, even though it was Christmas Eve. She answered on the third ring. "Natalie." "I know," I said. "I know what you were asking me, what Dr. Reeves was asking me. Tell me." "You weren't asking when I last felt at home in a place. You were asking when I last felt at home in myself." Silence. Then, "Yes." "And the answer," I said, looking around my purple childhood room, "is that I haven't. Not since I decided that who I actually am wasn't good enough. Not since I started performing instead of living." And now? I thought about the mermaid lamp, the emerald blanket, the emails from clients who were relieved I'd given them permission to want something real. The way my mother had looked at me tonight, seeing me, not the performance of me. "Now," I said, "I'm ready to find out who Natalie actually is. Not the Instagram version, not the magazine version. Just me." "Good," Dr. Chen said softly. "Because here's what I haven't told you yet. What Dr. Reeves and I both saw in your test results, in your body, in everything you presented but couldn't see yourself." My heart stopped. "What?" "You weren't sick, Natalie. You were disappearing. Your body was trying to tell you something your mind wouldn't admit. You can't live as a performance forever. Eventually, you have to come home to yourself, or there's nothing left to come home to." The words hung in the air, true and terrible and necessary. "Dr. Reeves asked you that question because she was terrified you'd designed yourself into non-existence, that you'd become so perfected, so polished, so immaculate. There'd be nothing real left underneath." I gripped the phone, staring at my purple walls, at the evidence of who I'd been before I learned to edit myself. "But there is," I whispered. "There is something left." "I know," Dr. Chen said. "And tomorrow when you're ready, we're going to help you find her again." After I became a millionaire, I stopped recognizing my own reflection. But what I didn't understand until that conversation with Dr. Chen, what I couldn't see until I was standing in my childhood bedroom on Christmas Eve, was that the doctor's question wasn't medical at all. It was an intervention. Dr. Reeves had looked at my test results and seen something that terrified her. Not illness, not disease. Something worse, the complete absence of stress markers that should have been there. No cortisol spikes, no elevated heart rate, no physical evidence of emotional response to anything. My body had stopped reacting because I had stopped feeling. I'd perfected myself into numbness. When was the last time you felt at home? Wasn't asking about a place. It was asking, when was the last time you felt anything at all? When was the last time you were present in your own life instead of performing it? The answer, the truth I'd been circling for months, was devastating in its simplicity. I couldn't remember. I'd spent 20 years designing the perfect life, the perfect apartment, perfect business, perfect appearance, perfect everything. And in the process, I'd designed myself right out of existence. I'd become a ghost haunting my own beautiful spaces, present but not living, successful but not real. Dr. Chen explained it to me that Christmas Eve in language I finally understood. "You created a museum of yourself, Natalie. Beautiful, untouchable, preserved. But museums are for things that are finished, things that are no longer alive." That's what her card had meant. Find your way back. Back to feeling. Back to messiness. Back to the girl who built fairy houses and painted her walls purple and believed that home was something you felt, not something you designed. I had become a millionaire by understanding what everyone else needed to feel at home, but I'd forgotten that I deserved that same understanding, that I deserved to take up space, to be imperfect, to exist as more than just evidence of my own success. The real change didn't happen overnight. It happened in small moments, small choices, small acts of rebellion against the perfection I'd built. I started leaving dishes in the sink, reading books that left creases in the spines, wearing clothes that wrinkled, saying no to projects that looked impressive but felt hollow, saying yes to things that scared me because they mattered. I redesigned my apartment, not all at once, but piece by piece. The cream sofa got recovered in a fabric with texture and color. The coffee table books got replaced with actual books I wanted to read. The orchids stayed, but I let them wilt and bloom on their own schedule instead of replacing them the moment they showed imperfection. I added photographs, me as a child, messy and happy, my parents on their wedding day, friends from college, before I learned to curate every image, evidence of a life actually lived. The mermaid lamp stayed on my nightstand, gaudy and perfect. My business changed too. I stopped taking clients who wanted magazine-perfect spaces and started working exclusively with people who wanted homes that felt like themselves, messy, beautiful, real. The revenue dropped, the prestige lessened. But for the first time in 20 years, I looked forward to work instead of using it as an escape. Amanda Strauss sent me a photo 6 months later, her reading nook, but now with a blanket draped messily over the chair, a half-empty teacup on the side table, a book face down on the ottoman. "You taught me it's okay to actually live in the space," she wrote. "Thank you for that." I sent her a photo back. My living room, with the emerald blanket tangled on the sofa, my laptop open on the coffee table, shoes kicked off by the door. "You taught me the same thing," I replied. My mother cried when I showed her the changes to my apartment. "This looks like you," she said, touching the vintage lamp, the colorful blanket, the photographs on the wall. "This looks like my daughter." "I'm sorry it took so long," I whispered. "You're here now," she said. "That's what matters." Dr. Reeves called me in for a follow-up physical 1 year after that initial appointment. Same tests, same examination room. But when she looked at my results this time, her expression was completely different. "Your cortisol is elevated," she said. "Is that bad?" "No," she smiled. "It means you're feeling things again. Stress, joy, fear, life. Your body is responding the way it should. You're not numb anymore, Natalie." I started crying right there in the examination room, and she handed me tissues, the cheap kind that actually work. "So what did you ask me that changed everything?" I said, wiping my eyes. "When you asked when I last felt at home?" "I asked you the only question that mattered," Dr. Reeves said gently. "The one I knew you couldn't answer. The one that would force you to finally look at what you'd been avoiding. That I was disappearing. That you had already disappeared," she corrected, "and that if someone didn't intervene, there might not be anything left to bring back." It's been 2 years now since that appointment. 2 years since Dr. Reeves asked me a question I couldn't answer, and Dr. Chen helped me find my way back to myself. My apartment still isn't perfect. There are dishes in the sink right now, books stacked on the floor, a painting I bought because I loved it, not because it matched anything. My hair is messy. My makeup is minimal. I'm wearing sweatpants on a Tuesday afternoon because they're comfortable and I'm home. Actually home. Not in a place that looks like home. In my own body. In my own life. Present. Imperfect. Real. I still design spaces for a living. But now, I design them the way I design for myself. With permission to be human. To be messy. To be alive. My clients cry more during final walkthroughs now. Not because the spaces are more beautiful, though they are, but because they finally feel like themselves in their own homes. That's the gift I discovered after I became a millionaire. Success means nothing if you're not present for it. Beauty means nothing if you're too numb to feel it. Home means nothing if you're not actually living there. The real question Dr. Reeves asked me wasn't, when was the last time you felt at home? It was, are you willing to come back to life? And the answer, the one I've been living into every day since, is yes. Yes to messiness. Yes to feeling. Yes to taking up space as my actual self instead of a performance of who I think I should be. Yes to being home in the only place that truly matters, in my own skin, in my own heart, in my own beautifully imperfect life. I'm standing in my living room now, late afternoon light streaming through windows I haven't cleaned in 2 weeks. There's a half-empty coffee cup on the table, a throw blanket in emerald green tangled on the sofa, the mermaid lamp glowing softly in the corner. It's not magazine perfect. It's not Instagram ready. It's not designed to impress anyone. But it's mine. Really, truly mine. And for the first time in 20 years, when I look around this space, at the evidence of a life being lived, not performed, I finally feel at home. If this story touched you, leave your rating from 0 to 10 in the comments and subscribe for the next journey.